Buenos dias. So I'm very sorry. Sorry, I don't speak Spanish, so you're going to have to put up with me doing this in English. And I just have two requests. One is that this is usually a class for me that I teach around 2 days. And so I have to compress it into 45 minutes. So I'm going to talk very quickly and go through the slides very fast. I don't want you to miss anything you're not interested in, and I don't like to lecture to just an audience. I like to be very interactive. So if you have a question or if I said something you don't understand, please just raise your hand and I will call on you and we'll have a conversation. I know that's not the usual way, but I much prefer the interactive presentation anyway. And the second thing is, I just want to take a selfie, so I just want you guys all to smile. Okay, here we go. I have 2 teenage daughters, so they teach me how to do this. All right, thank you. All right, perfect. All right, so that's me. This is what we're going to talk about. I usually teach this class for startups and for government representatives, usually in the US, now more in Europe. I'm going to talk more about this as maybe a little bit more about national development, so more from the government side, but I'm going to give you a taste of what we teach the startups. So this is me. I've been in the Air Force for 25 years in the United States. I'm still in as a reserve officer. I teach and run a couple centers at MIT. I've been there for about 8 years. And I've been a startup founder and I still sit on a few boards of startups. So in many ways you can see I live like a dual use life. I spend my time in the military, I put on the uniform, and then I come out to academia, and then I work in a startup or an advisor startup. So that helps me understand all of the worlds and help me build this curriculum now 5 years ago when we started trying to help startups in the United States get access to defense and government money. So we have this thing in the US Air Force military called the bluff. Has anyone ever heard of bluff? Does anyone know what that means? Raise your hand if you're brave. Yes, sir, what does that mean? No, but it literally does, but that's not what this means in this case. Anyone else? Perfect. Bottom line up front. So we don't like to waste time in the military. We like to give you the bottom line up front. Here it is. If you don't want to listen to anything else, that's fine. Here's the bottom line. Dual use is a strategy. It's not a category. In the US, this was kind of revolutionary, if you want to, I mean, not that revolutionary, but people really argued about this because they thought, I'm a dual use company. That means like I'm in a sector like AI or I'm in a sector like energy. And what we're saying is you're not a dual use company or not a dual use company. Dual use is a way to think from the startup standpoint or from any other kind of strategical standpoint, okay? So what do we teach dual use startups about this concept? This is a very general overview, but very basically we say dual use means you as a startup founder are either pursuing a customer or funding from the government or customer and funding from commercial, VCs, investors, things like that. You could do one of this one, two of this one, none of this one. It doesn't matter. If you are as a company pursuing funding or customers from either side, you're pursuing a dual use strategy. Does that make sense? In the very earliest stages, let me see, has anyone here ever been in a startup? Founded a startup, okay. Just a few folks. They're all in that back corner. Why do they stick you guys all in one corner? You should be more integrated. So those people up there, the startup founders, know that at the beginning when you're running a startup, it's all about being opportunistic. It's how can you get access to funding, customers, data at this moment right now. Because if you don't put food on the table, right? You don't eat. You have to find funding. You have to get money because this is what you do. So at the very earliest stages, being a startup founder is about being opportunistic and finding ways to get to funding. Sometimes it's from venture capital. Sometimes it's from government or defense. Okay? Again, I'm going to go faster than I usually do, but if there's a point you want me to stop on, please let me know. And from the government standpoint, dual use is a strategy to promote the economic security flywheel. It can be for any of these things, for productivity, new industrial base, it can be for any of them, none of them, but it is a way for you to think about accessing this part of the commercial world that maybe you did not access before. I sit on the Reagan Institute National Security Industrial Base Advisory Board, and that helps us how we think about the new industrial base. And what is the new industrial base? Startups. Small companies started with small groups, okay? All right, if you have any more questions about this stuff, we've written about it, we have lots of stuff on it. I just threw this up here real quick. If you want to take a picture, there's some QR codes. You can go look any more. If you want to get into the philosophy and theoreticals of dual use, I'm not going to bore you with all of our papers and everything on it, but that's all available if you want to look at it. Okay. All right. So how should academia, startups, and government work together to build a dual use innovation ecosystem? I think that's the question we're here to solve. We're here to answer. Chile is, well, first of all, I commend this event. I think it's fantastic. I'm super, super honored to be here. Chile is in with many, many other countries that are right now thinking about this very thing. This is great. It's not unique. It's happening all over the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, where the world is coming around to this idea, and it's only been the last probably 10 years that has happened. So, my number one suggestion to all government, industry, academia is to know thyself, to take the Socratic, the rule of Socrates is know thyself. Know who you are. Know what you can do. Know what you do best. And know what you do not do best. I've been in the government 25 years. My wife has been in the government for 20 years. I think I can say safely in a safe place with friends that sometimes we in the government don't know what we do best. Sometimes we think we can do something that we're not very good at. And that's across every government in every country around this world, is sometimes we say, we should do this, realize that we don't have the people, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the experience to do this, but it sounds like a good idea. And so what I'm saying is if we step back to first fundamentals, to first principles, is just do what you do well. Okay? I know it's a very simple concept, but sometimes we forget. So, what does the government not do well? And I see this all the time, and this is not about Chile, it's not about US government, it's about governments in general across the world, okay? First of all, government does not pick startup winners and losers well. I can tell you this from years and years of experience. Venture capital doesn't do it well. And these people are paid millions, if not billions of dollars to do it well. Venture capital lives on something called the power law. Does anyone know what the power law is? Offhand? Well, the entrepreneurs know what it is. They might not know the word. It's basically, I have to invest in 10 companies. 9 of them are going to be completely crap, and 1 of them will be successful, and that will pay for the rest of my fund. And I have to do this over and over and over again. They know they're going to be wrong 90% of the time, if not more. Right? So if they're this bad at picking winners and losers, why do we in the government think we're any better? And we don't do this for a living, and it doesn't depend on whether we have food on the table. It doesn't depend on whether we pick good winners or losers, right? We get a salary no matter what happens. These guys have to pick good winners or losers, or they don't make money. And they're still horrible at it. So why do we think we're good at it? Don't worry about returns. That's another thing I've seen a few times is, well, we have to create an economic return. That's not the point of investment, economic investment. It's not to create more money. It's to create new industries and new industrial bases. Government does not make it easy to access or understand what we're doing. It's very opaque. If you've been in the government for 30 years, like I have, you think, oh, this is easy. I mean, you know, this minister is over here, this minister reports to this guy, this office is now under this minister, our culture is this is how we work. We come into the office at 9, we leave the office at 5, we don't pick up the phone on Saturdays. But if you've never been in the government, you have no idea how this works. No idea. And sometimes we assume that other people out there do, but they don't. And the tyranny of the handoff is who's been in their position in the government, in the military specifically, you guys in uniform. How long have you been in one position longer than 3 years? Okay, well, some of the older guys, I'm not, the younger guys. How long, who here has been in their position longer than 3 years? Oh yeah, so 1, good job. That is unusual, and that is called the tyranny of the handoff. Oh, you know what, not my problem, this guy's taking over, I'm just gonna go ahead and pass this off. And the people on the other side have been working with you for 3 years to get to where they are, and then you say, okay, bye, I'm going off to a new assignment. This person's job now is to help you, and you gotta start all over again. Right? That sucks. I can tell you, on the other side, that sucks. But, you know, that's the government system. Okay? So, what is the role of the government? What does the government do well in a dual-use case? The most important thing, and I work at MIT, I brought a lot of this stuff to MIT, it didn't exist before, but I will tell you, I have lots and lots of faculty that work with me on this stuff. And it's not because I'm so charming and so wonderful to work with. It's because they are interested in the hardest problems in the world to solve. And it happens to be that national security, safety, defense have the hardest problems to solve. And that makes people very interested. It creates an intellectual motivation. That is what you should center the value chain around. Is we have these really, really hard, interesting problems. And we can provide a demand signal. We can say, we are interested in AI. And the rest of the country will follow. You can set that agenda. So the two things I usually say is, provide funding, provide problems, get out of the way. That's my advice to the government. Spend money, have hard problems, get out of the way. And if you do those things well, and I added, you know, provide access to the government ecosystem, if you do those things well, you can start building a really successful ecosystem with you as the center of it. Once you start doing all this other stuff, you're just adding friction. Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of a insight into what we teach startups so that the rest of you not in that corner over there kind of get an idea of what it's like to be a startup. And then we'll talk more about the economic development. Okay? How's the speed right now? Good? Okay. All right. What is a dual-use innovation? Well, if you asked about 70 years ago now, 80 years ago now, it would have been nuclear, space. Now it's almost anything. I usually sit and I ask the audience to start throwing, I don't show this list, and I ask the audience to start give me a technology, give me a sector, and let's see if we can figure out why we would not be dual use. And usually we can't find one because I can give you a use case for almost any other technology to be used by defense or the government. Probably dating apps is the only one I haven't been able to figure out yet, how we can get those into a dual use. But anything other than that, I think we can do. Does anyone want to argue that point with me? Is there something you think is not a dual use sector or technology? Okay. I'm glad. It seems to work. This is a very, very important part that we teach to startups. It's the fundamental part. Because a majority of the startups, well, maybe not anymore because it's actually caught on a lot, but at the beginning when I started teaching this, the majority of startups did not understand that there's this whole new pool of money over here that's free. But what I mean by free is, I'm not going to take equity out of your company if I give you this money. So the way we generally teach this system is, go get money from the VCs to build your company, go get non-dilutive money from the government to build your technology. So in the US, we have all of these different grants and the contract vehicles that we have with companies. We'll talk a little bit more about it there. And if you put in your application, I want to work on my technology to develop, the next phase of my prototype. I want to build, a new capacity, a new capability into this technology. That's what the government wants to work with you on. They want to create a capability for you to then give to them, right? They don't want a product. They don't want a technology. They want a capability. This thing does something. That's what I want to buy, capability. If you, as a startup founder in the US specifically, go to put in your application, your proposal, and say, I want to hire 2 marketing people, a new CTO, and I want to, go to 5 conferences for my company, you're not going to win the contract because the government has no interest in helping you build your company or help you travel to conferences. What they want is capability. What do you build that helps me accomplish my mission? Everything else, go to VC. You want to build your company, purchase platforms, hire employees. That's where you go to private industry. You want to work on your technology, develop a prototype. That's where you go to government. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Oh, got messed up a little bit. This is where we usually go back and forth with the audience. Like, there's a lot of stigma to working with defense and government. This is where we start, this is a little bit of a counseling session. I become a therapist. Like, why? Oh, they're so slow. They're so bad. I hate it. And a lot of this is still true. It's getting much, much better. That's a slow award to a contract. Certainly in the US, at least, when it used to take 18 months to get a contract, that did not align with the venture capital startup world, obviously. In 18 months, I could start a company and it could be dead, and I'm still waiting for you to respond to me. It's much faster now, and because of this kind of dual use becoming this thing globally, where government's starting to understand we can't do this on our schedule anymore. We have to do this on the commercial schedule. After the contract, there's no guarantee of continuance. You win one doesn't mean you're going to win another. There's no loyalty. It's hard to find the right person in an organization. It's very difficult for someone on the outside to just pick up the phone and call you from outside and have you pick up and give them anything other than who are you, why are you calling me? It's hard to get feedback. In the US specifically, it's really, really frustrating. Companies spend hours, months, applying for these grants, and the thing they get back is, sorry, you weren't selected. And we say, please reach out if you want feedback, but everyone I know who's ever reached out for feedback gets nothing, right? So we don't say why you didn't get selected, because you know why? It's probably because there's 1,000 applications. I don't have time to go through 900 and tell you why you didn't get selected, but that's really frustrating. Insider baseball, we call it insider baseball. I put football there because I'm not sure you guys care about baseball here, but it's basically, oh, we already know the company we're giving this to. We have an application, everyone please apply, but we know who really wants this to win this, and we're just going to give it to them anyway. So, that happens a lot. IP considerations I put up there. I put that up there to start a conversation. That used to be a problem because everybody thought the government was going to steal your IP. In the US, it's much less of a problem because what startups are realizing is the government doesn't want your IP. They don't know what to do with it, even if they had it. They want non-exclusive rights to, if you build something the government pays for and you build something amazing, they just want to have non-exclusive rights to it. They don't want you to have to license it from them. But that's always been a problem in the US, that's the reason why startups didn't work with the government. And we won't talk about defense primes here today. It's a much longer conversation. But this is what we show them is why you should work with the government. We have the big budgets, the hardest problems. It's a great first customer for a reference. Hey, we worked with DARPA is a great way to start with any venture capitalist. Cash flow bridge, we're running low on funds. We need $200,000 to get through. We're going to go apply for a phase one of a grant of somebody to get us through until we can raise another round. And the government can be very good if you can get through that trough of disillusionment, which is basically the way every startup company goes. You think of a good idea. Oh my God, we're going to start a startup. This is great. Oh my God, we're so good. We're going to be, oh God, this sucks. And then you spend a lot of time over here in the trough of disillusionment because everything is going bad. Today's everything's good. Tomorrow's everything's bad again. And then eventually you get out to some kind of plateau of productivity. But the government is great to get you through that. But the thing we teach is the first thing you got to do is understand your customer, understand the government. And then we spend 2 days teaching them all about how to work with the government, which we will not do here today. All right. We teach them about the ecosystem. We show them that, at least in the US, I'm sure it's not different in Chile, it's not different anywhere else I've ever been, but I'll say in the US, this is how we decide we want to communicate with the outside world. Like, we'll just give them this, and then they'll know how to work with us, right? Or we'll put together some circles and squares, and that will be, for sure, a good way for them to know how to work with us, right? This doesn't help anybody. Like, these things, someone spent 2 years and got a good medal for it. I know that happened. But this didn't help one single company work with the government. That I know for sure. That thing up there was created by the CTO of the Air Force. That's a big office, and lots of people in there. It's a bunch of circles connected with a bunch of lines. Okay. How does that help me get a contract with the government? Which circle am I supposed to click on to get my contract? We give them models of how to think, because again, this is very, very much like a human problem, is we don't know how the other half thinks. If you've been on this side for your whole life, you have no idea how the other side thinks and vice versa. So we try to teach the startups how the government thinks, or how you should think about working with the government. And this is one of the really eye-opening slides for them. I have 7 or 8 different heuristic slides of how to think, models to think about. But this one usually gets them really good, is because this is just NATO. I built this presentation initially for NATO Diana, and the startups there are from all over the NATO lines. And I think they all thought that NATO just buys for all of them. Turns out NATO is just, it's literally a treaty. It's a piece of paper they all signed. That's what NATO is. They all buy completely differently, all 32 countries. So if you want to work with the US, you're going to be working with every single service separately. If you got a contract with the Army, doesn't mean you have a contract with the Air Force or the Navy or the Coast Guard. You have to go to each one different separately. If you work with Finland or Czechia, you can work with the defense departments directly, just the defense department. Sweden always has to be different. It's got its own civilian corporation inside the defense department. And then there's a whole bunch of other models. And if you don't know this as a startup, if you think, oh, I got a contract with Germany, that means I'm going to be able to work with Turkey, you don't understand how government works. And so we have to change the way you think. Does this make sense? I'm sure I could ask how Chile works, but I don't know if we have the time to go through that, but I'm sure it's different than a lot of other Latin American countries. We built this model. It's just another one of those readiness level models, but I think it addresses the issue a little bit, is that for you to know how your startup kind of where it lives in this ecosystem, we created this way of kind of evaluating your readiness for dual use. And basically, there's 3 axes and 2 planes, so it's 5-dimensional if you want to visualize that. I don't know how to visualize that, but maybe you can. But we talk about technology readiness, customer readiness, and funding readiness across the mission market and the commercial market. So another way to think about all of this. Okay? All right. Now we'll switch over a little bit to thinking about this from a global and government standpoint. How am I on time, Danielle? How am I on time? I'm talking too much? 10 minutes? Oh, okay. Hang on. You guys are about to go fast. Okay. For global, this has been the moment of global defense and security, okay? I can tell you this, I've been in this business for a long time. I could not do half of the things I do right now across the world definitely not 10 years ago, maybe not 5 years ago. There's a moment right now, and it's happening because of the way the world is changing. I mean, defense market dynamics, I probably don't need to tell you guys, are crazy. Unprecedented expenditure across the world, unprecedented technology shifts, AI, drones, robotics, everything is going so fast. And I put unprecedented global deterioration of peace and security then question marks because I think we always like to think this is the most unsecure time in history. I think if we went back 1,000 years and kind of took a look around at the wars that were happening, we'd be like, oh no, we're pretty good. But it is, you can't avoid Ukraine, you can't avoid Israel and some of the conflicts in Africa. There's a lot going on, and technology is becoming the center of it. So the first case study we're going to talk about very quickly is the US. That's the picture of the gorilla. We have a saying in the US, the 900-pound gorilla of something. So the US is the 900-pound gorilla of defense spending. As you can see, we spend more than the 10 next countries combined. That's a huge advantage. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. We can make a lot of mistakes when we spend that much money, and something will come out of it, right? That's kind of the DARPA model, is spend a lot of money and the internet will come out eventually. And it's not just about money, is we have a huge head start on this. And I didn't realize what kind of head start we had until I went to Europe. I assumed maybe some other parts of the world were just starting to get into dual use. I thought Europe was further ahead. They're not. There's still enormous amount of latent capacity in Europe to get, and they're just waking up, as you know. They are very much waking up to this right now, but it's only been the last 2 or 3 years. So this is an eye chart. I'll just take a picture if you want, or I can. I'm sure I'll send the slides later. But this is just a small drop in the bucket of the innovation programs that the U.S. has. I don't even think this is 1/10 of what we have, to be honest. I just put the best kind of best ones I know. The Office of Strategic Capital was stood up by one of my colleagues in the office I work in the Pentagon about 3 years ago, just with the concept of we're just going to give really, really low-cost loans to startups around the technology areas that we're interested in. It's not a crazy concept. Loans. Well, loans have been around since the dawn of economy, but that the Pentagon is doing these loans that are incredibly low interest, and they're in the technology areas that they're interested in, and they're purposely picked by which areas they want to work on. And we're talking 10 to 150 million per loan from the Pentagon directly to a startup, not to Lockheed Martin, to a startup. And then there's Defense Innovation Unit, just got a budget up, increase to $2 billion. There's all AFWorks, so in the US, if you have the last 4 is works, W-E-R-X, that means you're doing innovation. I don't know why. Someone thought it was clever, and now there's a Defense Works, Air Force Works, a Navy Works, a Air Army Works. Everybody has their own works. But it's basically all different ways to give startups money from the government. And so on and so forth. DARPA itself has almost $500 billion. InQtel is the intelligence community's investment arm. It's a VC inside the CIA that gives out dilutive equity investment. So again, like this is crazy. Like sometimes I look at the slide and I think I'm a little embarrassed that we aren't doing more, to be honest with you. We have so many of these things, but the point of this is not for you to have to recreate this, because you can't. You'd have to go back in time 70 years, start then, and then somehow get your budget to about $1 trillion. That's not the point. The point is that there is things to learn from this. And I'm going to talk, the very last thing I'm going to talk about will be that slide, but if I get to it, if I don't get pulled off the stage. But I just wanted to give you the context of what the kind of things we have learned that you can do really, really well. Okay? Here's the cheat code. I'm going to go pretty quick towards this. I usually spend more time on this, but I think we can buzz through this. The real cheat code for the US is this SBIR, STTR program, which is called America's Seed Fund. I focus on this because we take it for granted that everybody knows about this in the world, and it turns out they don't. And so I really wanted to focus on this. It's a direct and unique pathway from the government to a customer bypassing competitive bidding. What does this mean? In the US, every single thing the government does has to be competitive, has to be competed. Except for if you win a phase 1 SBIR or STTR grant. Once you win one phase 1, you now can directly work with the government in any way, including in a non-competitive contract. It has 3 phases. Phase 1 is a feasibility study. Phase 2 is an R&D prototype development, and phase 3 is a commercialization. Roughly, phase 1 is about 50 to 100K US dollars. Phase 2 is about anywhere from 500,000 to 2-3 million, and the phase 3 could be hundreds of millions. Okay? It's 100% non-dilutive. It's only about technology commercialization. It is only to give you, a startup, the opportunity to have a little bit of funding to work in your technology development, get into the government pipeline, become familiar, start getting familiar with how the government or defense works, and to start bridging that valley of death. Okay? And you have to be a company less than 500 people. So by definition, you have to be an early stage startup company. Okay? Here's the real cheat code. It is law. It's not a policy. It is not an agency deciding they want to do this. It is a law that's been written in 1982 to stand up the Small Business Association that forces any US government organization with $100 million or more in budget to allocate 3.2% of that budget to small business. It requires each and every director of every single US transportation, health, Homeland Security, every single office, not just DOD, to allocate 3.2% of their budget for small businesses, and forces them to use that SBIR vehicle to expend that money, not to just hold on to it and allocate it and then sit on it. You have to use it. There's one more thing. I guess I hit it. Anyway, that's good enough on this. Does anyone? This is a big one, so I want to just take a pause if everyone's tracking and this makes sense. Okay. Other global case studies, that was the US. Israel was mentioned a little bit earlier. I think the gentleman left. Estonia, NATO, Diana. I don't have time to go through all of these case studies and explain all these different things, but all 3 of these countries have done dual use very, very differently, or NATO, Diana in terms of an alliance, but all of them have been extremely successful. You can't recreate Israel, right? You don't want to recreate Israel, trust me. You cannot recreate Israel, that kind of ecosystem. In Israel, defense and civilian are completely overlapping. There is no difference between those 2 ecosystems. Everybody there is served. All of the startups come out of defense. It is an incredible place, but you can't recreate that. Estonia is what we call punches way above their weight. Estonia is a tiny country. I think 900,000 people. Their GDP is less than Lockheed Martin's market cap, but they are the unicorn builder in Europe. Every Ukrainian startup that I know that is right now working out in Europe is incorporated in Estonia. They've made it so easy to work digitally and at a distance and create a company in Europe. And once you create a company in Estonia, now you have access to the EU and to NATO. It's just, they've been incredibly, and they've been doing this for 20 years. And it was all policy. None of it was, we have smarter people, better defense, none of that. It was all 20 years ago, government policy realized that they had to do something to separate themselves, and they decided to become the digital headquarters of Europe. And everything there is cyber and digital. And NATO, Diana, is just a great example of how 32 countries can come together, 32 countries that don't agree on anything. I've worked with NATO now for 3 years. Is this recorded? All right, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, just in case it leaks. It's very difficult to work in NATO. It's 32 countries that have to agree on every single decision, has to be a unanimous. 32 decisions countries have to make the same decision. And they were still able to launch a innovation fund of €1 billion that acts like a VC. It is a VC, a $1 billion VC, and an accelerator network now of, I think, 15 sites and something like 150 startups that go through different sites in NATO. It really is remarkable. And it just shows you that defense creates that urgency, right? I don't think NATO would have been doing this if there wasn't, Boris over on the other side knocking on the door. Okay? I'm going to skip this because you guys know better than I do the Latin American context. Latin American, I wanted to do a little comparison because I know Europe is something you and Chile think about a lot and compare a lot to. I will say that there's a lot to catch up to, and the areas that I would focus on most isn't necessarily the percentage of defense spend, because their percentages of defense spend now are very, very high, and that's again because they have an enemy very, very close by that's very belligerent, and they're just waking up to how much they have to start spending on defense. I would focus on the R&D relative to GDP. That is where the money is made in industry and commercialization. When you start focusing on R&D spend, and you create vehicles to spend that R&D on small companies, that's when you create the flywheel. Just by a little bit of research, the growth rates are good, but they're lower, the base is lower, and there's more variability in Latin America compared to Europe. Again, you can't right now do that comparison very easily because they are in the middle of a real awakening. And so I guess the question is for Chile and for Latin America is, how do you recreate that awakening without bringing Russia over and helping you get that awakening? All right, so where do you start? I'm almost done. We're landing this plane. Okay, policy, governance, funding, incentives, procurement, speed. Yes, the answer is all of those. Here's what not to do, and I see this all the time. We sit in Boston, one of the innovation kind of centers of the US. We hear a lot of people talking about Silicon Valley, and every time someone comes to visit from another country, another delegation, and they say, we want to be the Silicon Valley of Kamchatka. I say, okay, good luck. Let's create that time machine, go back to 1950s when Sputnik launched and the US decided this was a big deal, and let's start putting a lot of money into technology development. I didn't make that up. The official US response to Sputnik, Silicon Valley, 1957. That's how long ago we started thinking this way. So you will not be the Silicon Valley of anywhere. You will not be the Boston healthcare ecosystem of anywhere. That Boston healthcare ecosystem is unreplicatable. We have 3 of the top hospital systems in the world within probably 5 square kilometers of each other. You can't recreate that. What you can do is know thyself. What is Chile's opportunity? What is the thing that we can be, the best at? The Estonia of digital, the Germany of manufacturing, right? What is it that Chile can do that is not the Silicon Valley of anything? That is uniquely what you are really, really good at. And so this is my get off the stage. So I'm done. You don't have to look at me anymore up here for after the slide. This is just examples of what you could do. I'm not saying that this will work, and I'm not saying you should do this. I'm saying if I were to say where can we start adopting just the things that we've learned in the U.S. or that I know works in other contexts like Estonia, Israel, NATO, and other things like that. Stand up a defense innovation sandbox under maybe an economic growth office like NATO Diana. Remember, NATO Diana was an experiment. It's only been going on for 3 years. If you're willing to do it in the government, I think it's always very easy to think about, we're not standing up a program, we're standing up an experiment. That makes it very easy for people to say, okay, sure, yeah, experiment, that's fine. Pilot, good, we can do pilots. We don't like programs, no more programs, no more offices. Experiments are good. A government-backed safe space to experience with startups. A little bit of funding, a little bit of flexibility in contracting vehicle, and a way for startups to enter the door. Okay? SBIR, our cheat code. I'm not saying write a new law that says that looks like SBIR. I'm saying do an SBIR light. Create some kind of policy or some kind of agenda that lets you have startups, give them a vehicle that they know how to use, one thing that everybody knows how to apply for, and make it in a technology area like disaster relief or something else that you know really, really well how to do. Just start there and experiment with how well can this work, and then build once that starts working. We have this, strategic loan vehicles and matching VC. Very simple is, low interest loans or matching VC. If VCs invest in you for 100,000 pesos, 1 million pesos, we invest in you for 10 million pesos, something like that. Exchange programs are super good to start creating culture change. We have a lot of them where military officers can go work at startups, not large system integrators. I'm not talking about Lockheed or I know they're sponsors. I'm talking about startups. Bring them, let them work in a startup, let them work in a VC, let them work in another country as a commercial liaison. And then if you ever want to work on adopting our readiness levels, it's a good way of being able to evaluate where a startup is in their maturity. And you can now understand kind of where they are. So it just makes the language the same. Okay? Again, no promises this will work, but a good place to start. All right, that is it. Gracias.